Transfer your old ISA to Trading 212 and start building wealth today.
If you do surveys, you know the pain. You spend 10 minutes answering questions, then you get that brutal screen out message.
The rules. It's ultimately a piece of advice. So the first decision he took was to overrule it. I think that could be defensible. I'm very keen to hear why he did it, insofar as he can tell us. Remember, the Mandelson case is sub judice, as well as everything else. But the second big thing is he didn't tell, as far as I can see, didn't tell anybody. And that's a problem, because what it creates is he then co-signs a letter with Yvette Cooper saying due process was followed. I think that misled Parliament. And Yvette Cooper has to then stand up, as does Keir Starmer, and say, I'm sorry, Parliament was misled, but we didn't know. Ollie Robbins gets to say, Parliament was misled, but I did know. And I think that's why he's in the frame. You can't carry on if you've done that.
I mean, a couple of things. One, it's far too easy to brush aside that there was no one else better than Mandelson. I mean, Karen Pierce was a great ambassador. Our current ambassador
is
the previous ambassador.
Previous ambassador.
Our current ambassador is a great ambassador. So, Paul, I'm sorry, but you can't just say, oh, well, you know, he had no one else as good as
No, I didn't
Peter.
say that. I think he does have to bear the responsibility for the decision.
If what you say, which is pretty, explosive, that you've got insider information that the vetting came back as read, do not appoint, the CabSec would have known, right? There is no way, and I've been in the room, there's no way that Ollie Robbins would not have, maybe not the details, but the CAB secretary would have known. Would the CAB secretary have told the Prime Minister or not? That is a serious question to answer.
I mean, I want to pick up on something that Paul said, that the Prime Minister wanted to appoint a dodgy person to be our ambassador, our most important ambassadorial position in the world. The Prime Minister wanted to appoint a dodgy person. Paul's admitting that Keir knew that Mandelson was dodgy. Of course he did. We all know Mandelson's dodgy. As you said, so much of the information was in the public domain. Okay. Paul's used the phrase dodgy person.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
There are more than one dodgy person in public life.
I'm going to come back.
Maybe I should rephrase that. We all knew that there were question marks over Peter Mandelson in relation to Epstein, in relation to connections with China, in relation to connections with Russia. There were red flags already. This red vetting is a red herring.
We're going to come back to all of this. I just want to hear from the opposition. The Conservatives can claim some credit for the Prime Minister's latest troubles. They started a process that forced the release of documents about the appointment of Peter Mandelson. That was led by the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Alex Burghardt, and I spoke to him earlier. Alex Burghardt, the Prime Minister maintains that he was kept in the dark by Sir Ollie Robbins. Do you believe him?
It's very hard to believe anything the Prime Minister says anymore, isn't it? It's the truth is, the Prime Minister wants to blame everybody but himself. This was his appointment, and he's got to take responsibility for it. I find it very difficult to believe that nobody took the Prime Minister aside and said, so, you know, sir, there are some very serious concerns here. We know that the Prime Minister received a due diligence document from the Cabinet Office that set out very clearly that Peter Mandelson had business dealings that were inappropriate, that he'd been fired twice before, that he'd maintained this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So the Prime Minister was definitely in the loop one way or another. And in February, you'll remember, in answer to a question from Kemi Badenoch in the Commons, where she asked him whether the security vetting had thrown up anything about Jeffrey Epstein, the Prime Minister was very clear. He said it had, thereby implying that he had seen it and he knew what was in it.
Well, he claims now that he did not know that Mandelson didn't get a clean bill of health. Still not entirely clear what the vetting says, and we may never know. But are you saying that the Prime Minister is lying?
I would not be at all surprised if the Prime Minister was lying. I think the Prime Minister, everything that has run through his premiership has either been incompetent or dishonest, and I'm sure that there is a blend of the two in the case here. The fact is that the Prime Minister should have known, did know, not to appoint Peter Mandelson, but went ahead with it anyway, and in February suggested that he had seen the security vetting, and now is firing other people for his incompetence.
You're basically saying he's both a fool and a knave. You've called on him to resign. He won't.
I think he will have to be dragged out kicking and screaming. But I think we're getting to the point where a lot of Labour MPs want to see the back of him. So let's see what happens after the May elections, Trevor.
When you say he's going to have to be dragged out kicking and screaming, you've got quite a lot of experience of that from previous Conservative leaders, haven't you?
Well, this is the thing, Trevor, that the Labour Party watched some things a bit like this in the last Parliament. They're fully aware of what their responsibilities are to Parliament, and yet they failed them. Like, the Prime Minister, we're told, found out about this on Tuesday night. Let's just imagine that's true for the moment. Let's imagine he didn't know anything about it until Tuesday night. He has a very solemn duty under the rules of the House of Commons to correct the record at the first available opportunity. But he didn't do so on Wednesday, and he didn't do so on Thursday. And the only reason this came out was because of investigative journalism at The Guardian that broke the story on Thursday night. This is, at best, a cover-up, and at worst, deceit.
When are you going to lay your motion of no confidence?
Well, we have a number of tools in our parliamentary arsenal, and we will choose our moments appropriately. The Prime Minister is coming...
What else is in the toolbox?
So the Prime Minister is coming to the House, being forced to do a statement to the House on Monday. We will have Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, and you will see what else we have at our disposal as the week goes by.
Oh, we'll be watching wrapped with fascination on the edges of our seat. But what I can't quite understand is, if you think he's a liar, a fool, all the rest of it, why, in the interest of the country, don't you want to get rid of him? Is it because it suits you to have a lame-duck Prime Minister that you can do interviews like this about?
No, it's not good for the country to have a lame-duck Prime Minister.
We want you get rid of him.
We want him gone. Well, I'm very pleased that you have such confidence that a vote of no confidence would pass, Trevor. But you know that this depends on the support of the Labour Party.
So what else can you do? I'm very curious about the other possibilities. You have the Sphinx-like smile of a man who has got a bazooka up his sleeve. Show us a little bit of...
No, there are a number of things that opposition parties can do to force people to come to the dispatch box and answer questions, and we're looking at all of them. But it's what's going to be critical this week, Trevor, I think, is the fact that Ollie Robbins, the now fired top civil servant at the Foreign Office, is giving evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee on Tuesday. We understand that Sir Oliver is very unhappy about the way in which he's been treated, so he may have his own side of the story, which could be very revealing.
Well, of course, some of your colleagues have had their own run-ins with the civil service. Are you sure that it is right for you to essentially take the side of the senior civil servant against the politicians? Because Priti Patel, others have been accused of all sorts of things, and essentially you've lined up with the politicians. Are you sure you're right on this one?
I've been a part... Take the case of Amber Rudd when she was Home Secretary. And what we have now is that the Prime Minister, contrary to advice and evidence, appointed someone to be ambassador to Washington who it turns out was a security risk. So he put someone who was a security risk in our most sensitive diplomatic post. And who's had to take responsibility for that so far? The Downing Street Chief of Staff, the Downing Street Head of Comms, the Cabinet Secretary, and the Chief Mandarin at the Foreign Office. No politician has taken responsibility, but this was a political decision. I think this stinks, Trevor, and it's about time the person at the top admitted that he got it wrong, it's on him, and he does the honourable thing.
Alex Burkhart, thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Trevor.
Well, all the main opposition parties have now called for the Prime Minister to resign. I can now speak to the Liberal Democrat leader, Ed Davey. Good morning.
Good morning, Trevor.
You called on the Prime Minister to resign. He will say, I guess tomorrow, that he had no idea of the outcome of the vetting. This morning, his colleague Liz Kendall told us that he was a man of integrity. Why don't you believe him?
Well, I think on the vetting process, there's no doubt that he was using that as his main defence to justify a decision which many of us criticise, the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson. So the vetting issue was his main defence. So it was reasonable for us to expect that he had asked lots of questions about that vetting process, that he understood it. and it's now apparent that he hadn't asked those questions. And so I think for someone in his position to come to the House of Commons, talk to the British people and say there was no problem here because the vetting process was strong, but not having checked that, I'm afraid that is totally incompetent, if you can believe it. So we do have criticisms about it, but it's not just on vetting, to be honest, Trevor. The original decision that was taken, given he had these briefings we now see from the documents that have been released, that said Peter Mandelson had maintained a close relationship with the convicted paedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein after those convictions, should have made the Prime Minister say, no, we're not going ahead with this appointment. So on many levels, the Prime Minister showed catastrophic misjudgment, and that's why we have said he needs to go.
There are two different explanations being advanced. One is that the Prime Minister is incompetent. The other is that he is lying. In fact, three. One, that he's incompetent. One, that he's lying. The third, that he is both. Fool, knave, or both?
Well, I don't know. Let me give you a fourth reason, Trevor. The thing that I think Labour MPs should think about quite carefully now is their government has been a bit of a failure, frankly, on the economy, on so much. And it's in chaos in the way that Conservatives were in chaos and in perpetual crisis. And I don't think they can get out of that unless Keir Starmer moves aside. And if they don't, there's a real danger they're handing the keys to number 10 to Nigel Farage, who can benefit from this chaos. So I would really say to Labour MPs, who in many ways have the future of the Prime Minister in their hands, that they really now have to accept the Prime Minister is a big part of their own problem, and in the context of the threat that Nigel Farage poses to our democracy and to our country with his divisive Trump-like politics, I think the Labour Party has to realise they have to move on.
If I may say so, you swerved my question about the Prime Minister's character rather elegantly. So let me put it to you in another way. Let's say we're in 2010 type situation again, and you were asked to consider coalition with the Labour Party or possibly supporting the Labour Party after the next election. Would you support a Keir Starmer-led government?
Well, it's obvious from our position on this at this moment that we couldn't, because we're calling for his resignation. But coalitions are for another day, Trevor. I'm going back to your question. I wasn't trying to avoid your question about his character. I think he's a vast improvement on people like Boris Johnson, but that's a very low bar, isn't it? I think he came into office saying he was going to put all that chaos and crisis behind. There weren't going to be the sleaze and the scandals, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. He thought, yes, there'll be change from those awful Conservative years, but that has not happened. And the Mandelson crisis shows that beyond anything else. Everybody knew Peter Mandelson was a risky appointment, and we now know that the Prime Minister back in December knew it was beyond risky. It would have been a big mistake to appoint him, but he went ahead. And that's why I think Labour MPs will want him to go. He's shown a series of very poor political judgments, and I think he may well have misled the Commons.
OK, well, Prime Minister is going to talk tomorrow. Ollie Robbins will talk on Tuesday. You'll no doubt be listening to both very carefully. If you are not satisfied after all of that, that your questions have been answered, or that you think that the Prime Minister essentially has done something wrong or been guilty of serious misjudgment, what can you do about it? Are you ready to move a motion of no confidence?
Well, I think we need to look at that, absolutely. But there is something else that the Prime Minister did.
We believe investing is for everyone. AJ Bell, feel good investing.
That's a special process which looks at whether a minister has broken the ministerial code and misled Parliament and lied to Parliament. Keir Starmer championed that approach against Boris Johnson. I think it's right that that approach is now applied to him. And that's what Liberal Democrats have been calling for. We hope we can get other parties behind us. Let's see what the Prime Minister says on Monday. At the moment, I can't see he can give any explanation for his very poor judgment. There might even be an emergency debate on Tuesday. I'd be expecting that ahead of Prime Minister's questions. And as a result of all that parliamentary pressure, if, as I suspect, we will not be satisfied by the answers we get, then I think a referral to the Privilege Committee is the next step.
All right, well, let's talk about really what should lie behind all of this, which is actual politics. You're campaigning for May the 7th, the local elections, Scotland and Welsh Parliament elections. I've looked at your manifesto. Given that oil prices have been well above $100 a barrel, gas prices similarly elevated, no sign they're going to fall back to their previous levels. Do you regret promising on your party website to halve energy bills were you elected?
Not at all. We put that forward as a 10-year programme and we maintain that. You're right that oil and gas prices are at record levels and that's hurting the British economy. And the question is, what do you do about that? First of all, you clearly need to invest in renewables and we have led that in our country, a proud record of investing in a much cleaner and cheaper green energy. But more than that, we believe we need help for people now. So the Chancellor is getting in actually a windfall revenues from these higher oil and gas prices. That's hurting people, pensioners and families, is hurting businesses, hurting our economy. And we think the Chancellor needs to act now. And we've put forward a package paid for by this windfall revenue to cut excise duty on petrol and diesel by 10p. That would deliver a price cut at the pumps of 12p a litre.
And that's not halving energy bills, is it?
No, well, I'm dealing with it at the moment. I'm happy to deal with the long-term issue, very happy. But here's a package for now. Not only would we want to see those petrol and diesel prices fall, we've suggested that the £3 cap on bus fares goes down to £1. Rail fares are cut by 10%. That would be a 3-month temporary emergency package to keep our economy moving against these huge threats from that have resulted from Trump's idiotic war.
Who's paying for all that, Mr. Davey? Who's paying for all that? Where's the money coming from?
Well, I did explain my answer, Trevor. There is a windfall coming to the Treasury from higher oil and gas prices in the form of the higher money from the energy profits levy, from the gas tax and from VAT on fuel duty.
That's a big storm that's going to deliver the cut in bus fares, the cut in energy bills, all of the other things that you're promising.
Let me take you through. Let me take you through the numbers. We put them in the public domain. They're very transparent. Essentially, the estimates from the city have suggested that the Chancellor is going to get in £8 billion a year should this continue for a year. So we've said, let's just do it in 3 months because we hope it's all over in 3 months. That's £2 billion extra to the Exchequer, and our package costs that same money. So we're recycling the windfall to make sure our economy keeps moving. And I worry if we don't, not only will people be hit in the pocket and businesses will be hit, but our economy will come to a grinding halt. And I'm really shocked, actually, that the Chancellor hasn't moved already. It seems obvious to me. Other countries are doing it, Trevor. Australia's doing it. Italy's doing it. Spain's doing it. Lots of states in the United States are doing it. They're taking action to protect people and protect the economy, but we're not doing it. And I'm really surprised, actually, that Conservatives and Reform haven't done anything like this. We're the only party arguing for this emergency package.
I must say, that all sounds absolutely terrific. But, of course, you do know that the reason oil prices are at the height they are is largely because, and you've said it yourself, because of the action of one Donald Trump, who you think is a terrible thing and ought to be got rid of. So, do you want the windfall from Donald Trump's actions, or do you want to get rid of Donald Trump? You can't have both, can you?
Look, if Donald Trump hadn't waged his idiotic, reckless war in Iran, supported by Nigel Farage, his biggest cheerleader, then the prices wouldn't have gone up, would they, Trevor?
Yeah, but he's giving you your windfall, so you quite like him, really, don't you?
No, I think no one watching this programme will believe you, Trevor. They know that I've been the fiercest critic of Donald Trump in the country.
But you love
from
his
the get-go.
oil prices.
No, I don't. No, Trevor, come on, you know that's not true. What I'm saying is we wish the war hadn't happened. It's an idiotic war. And if it hadn't happened, there wouldn't be this windfall and there wouldn't be the need to cut the prices because they wouldn't have gone up in the first place. We have to react to the fact that this war has happened, the prices have gone up, and people are suffering and the economy is suffering, and we've got a fully costed package which is sensible and would help our economy. What I don't understand is why it's been left to us, the Tories absent, Reform are absent, and I'm afraid the Chancellor is absent too. We need people out there who are thinking about who they're going to vote for in the May elections need to know there is a party who's on their side.
All right. Ed Davies, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back to our panel, Nadim, Joanna and Paul. Joanna, Lib Dems ought to be benefiting from Labour's woes.
So I think there was a lot of merit in what Ed Davey had to say there. But in terms of benefiting from Labour's woes, obviously the situation I understand best is the situation in Scotland. And on the ground, I think the Lib Dems will pick up 1 or 2 extra seats in Scotland. But that's not so much because of Labour's woes, it's more because of the woes of my former political party, the SNP.
Well, we want to come back. I want to come back and talk about the nationalist advance towards the end of the programme. Paul, the economics of that, does that make sense to you?
Of?
What Ed Davey was saying, windfall and all that.
I would go further. And remember, we're in a policy purdah period before the May local elections. I want to see Labour bring price caps full stop. I mean, during the inflation surge that followed COVID in the early part of this decade, the Spanish government managed to really bear down on inflation by bringing price caps, rent caps, all kinds of controls on prices. Now, it's not the British way, and I'm sure that in the HM Treasury, if anybody's watching this, they'll be having a sort of a hissy fit that I'm even saying it. But I think we have to think radically, but I think you do it as a blockbuster. I think, however, just bearing in mind what Ed Davey was saying there and the Conservative spokesperson, you know, this country is under hybrid attack. We've got Russian ships in the Channel. We've got, is it 5? I'm losing count, anti-Semitic arson attacks being claimed by a Middle Eastern terror group. We've got the Ukraine war. We've got the imminent stagnation. The idea that Labour MPs are going to troop into the Parliament tomorrow and back a motion of no confidence against their own leader, who is admirably dealing with many of these things, is for the birds.
Nadim, Ed Davies having a good go at you, or your party, I
have to say, I'm watching that and thinking that is the party of Gladstone and Palmerston and is now led by a court jester called Ed Davey, who one, he hasn't costed what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He claims that Reform have no policies to have. We've announced £200 off your energy bills, fully costed by Robert Jenrick. And then he basically skates over everything they've done to destroy gas production from the United Kingdom, our own energy production. You know, we have valuable energy in this country that we are not only not using, it is harming us at the moment because of the Lib Dem, because of Ed Miliband Labour policies. I just feel sorry for a once great party of Palmerston has ended up with Ed Davey.
OK, we'll hear more later. In just a moment, we'll hear from our panel.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You say... Not impose tariffs.
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Well, it's going to be a very big week ahead. The Prime Minister will address Parliament tomorrow, and Ollie Robbins is likely to appear before MPs on Tuesday. So let's go back to Nadeem, Joanna and Paul. Paul, what do you expect Prime Minister to say tomorrow?
Well, I hope he'll give a full account of what was known in Downing Street, which their line is nothing, little or nothing. There needs to be an answer to why the then press spokesperson Tim Allen did brush that off. That's something that he needs to answer.
Nadeem's point is important, isn't it? Because actually, it's hard to imagine Director of Communications just saying no, but not checking with anybody.
And as a working journalist, you know, if you've got two sources giving you the results of a DV inquiry, that's quite a scoop. But I think, you know, Keir will be quite capable of setting out what was known, what wasn't known, and we need a judgment about was the House misled, because we as citizens can only be represented by our MPs. They need to be told the truth, and it looks to me like the line will be that we were led into unwittingly or knowingly misleading the Commons. And I think that relates to Ed Davies' point, because you can't move the referral to the Standards Commissioner unless it's a knowing misleading. With Ollie Robbins on Tuesday, of course, the FCDO Select Committee is also going to do its own inquiry into what was known, so that will be useful. I think the important thing is to judge whether this is going to synthesise with an ongoing problem in government, which is you've got Antonio Romeo, the Cabinet Secretary, on a mission to make government more effective, more centralised, more dynamic. And you know, and we on this panel all know, that a slightly misogynistic campaign was unleashed at her appointment by a bunch of older people who don't like the way the civil service is being revolutionised. And I fear that this is going to turn into that battle.
What do you think, Nadeem?
Couple of things. One, I think he's a rabbit in the headlights. He knew about this on Tuesday. If he was really confident, by Wednesday last week, he should have come forward. By Thursday, he should have come forward. He didn't. The real agony for him now will be, one, his wife is miserable, he's miserable, and the real unknown is where are the Labour backbenchers, right? Because they're getting emails and letters about this now. And where are his junior ministers and then his cabinet? Because if you start seeing people peel off, you know, Anna Sarwar will be doing two things this weekend. One, pulling his hair out because he is so worried about the elections. Two, he'll be ringing people up saying, I told you so, we should have got rid of him. Now we're having to pay the price. This is going to go on and on. He's a dead man walking, and he just needs to realise it quite quickly and move on. The danger for Labour is you've got Andy Burnham, I think I saw this morning, was meeting with Angela Rayner secretly. You've got Ed Miliband on manoeuvres. You've got Wes Streeting thinking he's back in the game. All this is going on in the background whilst Keir just keeps repeating. The other day, it was painful to watch him with your own Sam Coates. He kept repeating the same thing. Every question had the same answer, and he just looked like an automaton.
I have seen a few Tory leaders doing something similar.
And hence why I've moved to Reform. And you've got someone in Nigel Farage who actually does do the straight talking and does tell people when he's...
Let's not get on to... Joanna, I mean, both in your sort of, if you like, your thinking as a prosecutor and also as an opposition MP, how do you think that the opposition is going to pursue this? And is there anything that he could do, as it were, to call off the dogs?
I mean, the difficulty for the opposition is that the only way they're going to bring the Prime Minister down is if they can get enough Labour MPs to go with them. And I don't think Labour MPs are going to bring a Prime Minister down on the eve of, in the weeks leading up to major elections. But I do think he's a dead man walking. Let's see what happens to him as a result of the elections. Of course, Anas Sarwar will be tearing his hair out. 18 months ago, he thought he was going to be the next First Minister of Scotland. As a result of the disastrous performance of this Labour government, nobody in Scotland thinks that's a serious possibility. And the annoying thing for Labour in Scotland is...
Build wealth, tax-free, with the UK's #1 stocks ISA. Invest with zero commission and zero account.
And indeed the scandals that are swamping the SNP in the newspapers this weekend. There's a huge exclusive in the Sunday Mail about the alleged conspiracy to bring Alex Salmond down. A whole load of information a whole load of new information in the public domain. I've put a whole load of new information in the public domain in my forthcoming book. But none of this is sticking to the SNP because everybody's focused on the circus down here. And the risk is that in Scotland, the election is not going to be about electing an effective government in Scotland. It's going to be about people venting their wrath against Labour because people put their faith in Labour at the general election, and it's been utterly dashed. And we had months and months, it felt like years, of this sort of shenanigans over Boris Johnson, and now we find a Labour Prime Minister who many of us had understood was a man of integrity, facing the same sort of questions.
We'll, as a matter of fact, we'll talk to the SNP leader next week, and I want to come back actually and talk about the prospect of nationalist leaders in Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast. First time that will have happened, but we're going to first talk to one. In just a moment, we'll hear from the Plaid Cymru leader, Rhys Iorwerth.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
As if Labour and the Prime Minister's troubles weren't enough, they look likely not only to lose power in the Welsh Senedd, but to be wiped out. If that does happen, it will be a seismic moment in British politics, in what is considered to be Labour's spiritual home. This chart shows the latest polling. There's a slight lead for Plaid Cymru and the emergence of reform as a major force in Wales, pushing Labour into a potentially catastrophic third place. Let's talk now to Plaid Cymru leader Rhys Iorwerth. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
I take it you too think the Prime Minister should resign?
This is a matter of a question about the authority of the Prime Minister. You know, we were saying a few days ago that either he wasn't telling the truth or that he wasn't in control. Now, you know, the story we're hearing is that he did not know, and therefore the truth question is perhaps part...
Bike sold. Laptop sold. It's free and easy to sell on eBay.
Fundamental issues that were at play within his government that would have a deep impact on people's views of that government, its activities. I think that begs the most serious of questions about his authority.
Does this whole imbroglio really put independence from Westminster further up your agenda?
Well, the question of independence isn't a question for this particular election, but the question of the relationship between Wales and Westminster, absolutely yes. That's at the core of this election. What people tell us time and time again, day after day, is that they want a government that's willing to stand up for Wales, make the case for Wales, be determined and relentless in making the case for more powers to control our future and more funds in order to give us the fairness that we deserve. Now, what we've seen is a degradation in belief that Labour stood for Wales, both through the actions of Keir Starmer in not being particularly interested in Wales, and in Labour in Wales failing to stand up to him. So yes, absolutely, that's at the heart of this election. What we can do in Wales to stand up for ourselves against the indifference of a UK government, be that under Conservative or Labour leadership.
All the same, though, if you manage to get into government, you want to be more than a protest group, as it were, a supplicant to Westminster. Presumably, you're going to want to look forward to a referendum on independence. When will that be if you become First Minister?
Well, people in Wales, of course, know full well that in our 100 years plus history, Plaid Cymru is much more, of course, than a protest party. It is a party that has had a vision for Wales for decades, for generations, and now people believe we may be in a position to lead government for the very first time. Now, that discussion on where we take Wales is a live one. As I say, independence isn't a question for this election, but very much it's about how we reach our potential, and that ultimately is what the constitutional question is about. Are we reaching our potential? No. Is this the best things could get for Wales? No. What can we in Wales do with a Wales-based party? It's only Plaid Cymru that holds that mantle. What can we do with a Wales-based government to take Wales forward? And people are showing a greater level of belief in what we can achieve for them than ever before.
Well, look, as they say, to governors to choose. So let's talk about some of the choices that you might make. You've got this new electoral system. You elect 96 members of the Welsh Assembly. The likelihood is that there's going to have to be some kind of coalition. Is there any party with which you would never cooperate?
I'd correct you. It's not inevitable that there has to be a coalition. Coalition is one means by which parties can work together. And I've made it clear that should we be able to win the trust of the people of Wales in the way I hope we can, Plaid Cymru would be able to form a minority government. But that would be a government that would be explicit in wanting to form agreements with other people on issues where we have common ground, on passing legislation, on passing budgets, on getting things done on behalf of the people of Wales, and on who we wouldn't work for. I've made it clear that they wouldn't be working with Reform because they are diametrically opposed, as far as I can see, to everything that Plaid Cymru stands for. So this is maturity. We're still not used in these islands, really, to having proportional systems where you don't have majority governments. We've never had a majority government in the history of devolution.